So I am feeling like this is going to be a heartfelt transmission and also a little bit of a taboo transmission, because what is inspiring me to record/write this is one of the things that I'm most proud of is I've really, really learned to track my body and my brain in a way that I'm going to just toot my own horn here and maybe sound a little superior. I don't think most people do. And so I think most people just run much more unconsciously, But I've been tracking myself this weekend. Well, for many years now. And what I'm noticing, especially since I moved in with my co-parent, which is a story for another time, that I am just so incredibly tense around my son. And it's because he acts in a way that I think the world is really threatened by. And I just watch the way that my co-parent is with my son. And he's just constantly on his case, shutting him down, telling him no, telling him to stop, escalating, threatening. And I hate that. And it's not entirely one way. Like, my kid does provoke. My kid does act in a way that's wild and inappropriate. And so this morning, as we were walking to school, for some reason, he had to have his hands all over a stranger's car. And I just heard my voice, and there was so much tightness in it and despair in it when I was just like, can you please not do that? I don't know that he seems oblivious to how provocative and threatening he comes off as in this cultural consciousness. And I just, I feel like the older you get, as a kid, maybe it's okay to have your hands all over a random car. And then the older you get, the more you attract attention, the more a cop might, stop by and be like, what are you doing? There's a risk of setting off a car alarm, all these things. And I can't help but there's a bifurcation that happens in my thoughts as I'm noticing how triggered I am by my kid. How much my animal reaction is just to stuff him down, make him small. And I have these visuals sometimes of just literally smushing him into a trunk and slamming the lid shut. Putting the genie back into the bottle. You're an explosion of chaos. And I don't know. Let me get back to the bifurcation. So the bifurcation is, on the one hand, just managing my own awareness of being triggered by my kid's behavior. And on the other hand, just a wondering, sending a tendril of wondering into my past. And what was done to me? What was done to me that I am such a police officer around smallness and compliance and consideration and I know my parents, my parents immigrated here. And so I think they very much felt in some ways they were not necessarily on enemy territory, but on alien territory. There's a particular lack of belonging that happens when you're an immigrant. And then the body's unconscious safety systems are like, don't make myself look like a threat. If I expose myself as a threat, or if I act in a way to be interpreted as a threat, like, I will bring danger upon myself. And so I can only imagine that my parents, more so even than other parents, were like very, very hypersensitive around drawing attention to themselves, around, I don't know, standing out in any way. I know for a fact, like, even as I observe my parents as an adult, with much more recent memories, my parents are like incredibly aware of how they're affecting strangers. Like, they sort of preemptively get out of people's way, and they like apologize a lot, and so so part of it is like grief at how we've all been squashed in this culture into smallness. Part of it, honestly, is like, do I regret having, like, I regret so many things about Christopher in particular. Like, I regret that I wasn't ready to have a kid. I had just been fed like this cultural script of like, after you get married, you have a kid. And what's wild is like, there was a big part of me that was questioning it. And there was also a part of me that was shutting that part down, because it was inconvenient. And because I just so badly wanted this, simple sort of like, this is what we do next, to be true. Like, I didn't want to think for myself. But I can't help but make connections, especially what I know about like neuroscience and the connection between a mom's nervous system and her baby's nervous system. Like we know this now. Science has proved it. Like, I was in a horrific state when I was pregnant, and also in a horrific state when Christopher was an infant. So in some ways, like, I created the monster is just the language I'm going to use. Like, the way that my kid is now, like, misattuned and chaotic and, like, very heavily prone to disassociation, which, makes the misattunement even worse. Like, it's my fault. I wasn't a calm parent. Like, my nervous system was absolutely blown up. And also, in a sense, it's not my fault. It's the fault of this culture. This culture fails mothers in a million different ways. So there is that piece too, Anyways, I'm watching my kid on the playground, and he is screaming utter nonsense. He is like, I wouldn't say attacking the other kids on the swings, because he's not like pushing them off the swings, but he's like running wildly from swing to swing. All the swings are full of kids, trying to secure a swing for himself. And I'm standing there, and my entire system is just bracing, because like all the other kids are placid, and it's just my kid that has this. And I'll interrupt myself here. Like, I'm pretty sure this isn't entirely true. I'm pretty sure, because my system is so hyper focused on Christopher as a potential threat, that I'm probably missing other kids acting like equally as wild. But just my kid, his whole body language, even today, like, he has a slightly oversized sweatshirt on, and the sleeves are long, so then he's like flinging them around and whipping them around, and I just, I caught myself thinking, like, only my kid could make a shirt into like something that feels threatening. like I probably, like a part of me really wants to cut his sleeves down so he can't fling them around. Anyways. So I caught myself thinking, and this isn't the first time, and I just want to be really honest about this. I caught myself thinking, I wish I could return this kid. Like, if he was a dog that we got from the pound, I would have brought this dog home, and I would have been like, you're too fucking crazy. I don't want to deal with you. Like, I want a different dog. I want a more placid dog. And obviously with kids, you can't return them to the pound. And, before you come for me, I think we need to unshame the fact that I'm not the only mom that feels this way, not by a long shot. And also, this doesn't make me a bad person. It makes me a human. And I don't need to immediately follow up my, like, I regret having my kid. And obviously there's nuance there. It's not that I regret having my kid. It's I regret who I was. I regret being an American. I regret, having a kid in late stage capitalism. There's a lot of nuance here where, like, it's not me or my kid that are wrong at all. I want to be super clear. The full force of blame and fault absolutely falls on, this suicidal, uber cruel culture that we're living in. It's a culture where no one is actually allowed to feel safe unless you're fully masked and armored. And is that safety? If you have to put on a suit of armor and a mask, it's not. But you know what? I think it's okay to say I regret having kids. If I had known how much it would cause me to be disregarded and used and sacrificed and just fed off of, I wouldn't have done it. It's one of the things I grieve the most and the most often is how disregarded I am. The minute I became a mom, it's like it became okay to treat me like an object that was purely sacrificial. My family started treating me differently. My co-parents started treating me differently. My kids, God bless them, they're tiny little proto-humans still. They certainly don't jump out of bed every morning and say, like, I so appreciate everything you've done for me. I see you. I see how much you're giving. It's just like it's expected that you become a shell of a human when you become a mother. And I have so much grief around that. And anytime I've ever seen anyone brave enough to post something like this, like, if I could go back in time, I probably wouldn't have kids. Or some version of that. I wouldn't have kids with this person. I wouldn't have kids at this age or whatever. I mean, I think this is part of the truth that I want to transmit into the world. Like, kids are a massive liability. They're a massive restriction. They are, and let me be clear, the patriarchy's way of most fully trapping and blocking and controlling a woman. And, again, like, I know all y'all are just, like, coming at me in your heads. And nothing I say is meant to be mutually exclusive with, like, so many people spent their whole lives wanting kids. You know, so many people, like, found their fulfillment and, you know, their joy when they had kids. But I'm intentionally leaving a big gap before I roll around and say what I feel like is perfunctory and performative. This piece around, like, but, you know, like, I love my kids. I can both regret my kids and love my kids at the same time. I can both regret having kids and not want to give up having kids at the same time. And I can sound these warning bells. It can be my entire ministry to warn women against having kids, while at the same time, women can deeply desire kids with their whole heart and just be so sure that they want to have kids. Both can happen at the same time. They do not cancel each other out. And I really want to get to a place where I can say I regret having kids, and I don't have to immediately follow up with, but I love them, because I hate having to prove to strangers that I'm a good person. I hate having to feel like I have to, like, defend myself. That doesn't come from, like, the honest desire of my heart to proclaim that I love my kids in this moment. That happens at other moments. It's not this moment. This was a tough morning. It comes from the fear of being judged. It comes, again, from the influence of this, like, deeply carceral, deeply punitive, deeply trauma-based culture that we're in. And so that's why I resist. I mean, I kind of sprinkled it in there so you wouldn't think I'm a total monster, but, like, why the hell are you thinking I'm a monster? I'm just telling the truth. And I'm also taking really good care of my kids. And I also love them. You know, whatever love means. That's the other thing that I don't really want to get into, but what does love mean? We all have different definitions of it. And they're all slightly fucked and deeply codependent. So, what am I trying to do here? What am I trying to say? I think I'm just trying to unshame the fact that my system is profoundly threatened by my kid. And if I'm being honest, a large part of me just wants to squash him in a trunk. A large part of me wants to be like, why are you so inconvenient and provocative and loud and terrifying? And, like, when will you get that you're setting yourself up, like, with a target on your chest? And then, of course, like, a shame voice creeps in. It's like, how dare you feel this way about your kid? You're the problem. You just need to deal with your triggers. And I think what I just want to wrap with is, well, for all the other parents that are, you know, caught in conflicting truths and emotions, I want you to know I see you. I don't think you're bad or wrong. I love the truth telling. And I think the more truthful we are about every single part of us, even the parts of us that hate parenting, the better parents we are, full stop. The weird, wacky shit happens when we repress and when things get pushed into shadow. And I forget what else I wanted to say. Yeah, you're not bad or wrong if this is your truth. I just want you to feel more and more free to say it and less afraid that that turns you into a monster. It doesn't. It turned me into a parent coach, and a damn good one. The body and the brain, here's the other thing that I think is so protective and so wonderful, is given enough space and enough acceptance, the body and the brain and the heart always bend towards healing. And here's what happened for me. This morning, you know, I had a moment of, like, sort of cuffing my kid's spirit when I just, my voice was so hissy when I was like, don't do that, don't touch the car, why are you like this? you know? And then I have to repair with myself around that because I didn't like who I was when I did that. And so this is something me and Molly on our Wild and Wilder podcast we've touched on. You have to repair with yourself too, you know, more so than just with your child, honestly. So I have to forgive myself because I'm doing my best. And as I was staring at my kid kind of hooting and hollering like a chimpanzee on the playground, just kind of wondering when he's going to get in trouble. And then also wondering, like, am I just making this up? Does everyone else actually find him non-threatening? Is this just like my consciousness that's the trap? Am I doing this to myself and to him? And is this even reality? Or is the world actually safer and more accepting than I think, you know? I just had this idea of something that I wanted to post on Threads. And for those of you who don't know, I'm out myself right now. I choose a social media platform where I can be my most taboo and uncensored self. And for a while it was TikTok, and these days it's Threads. So I had this idea of something that I wanted to post on Threads, and it was something like, it's okay to regret having kids, you know, full stop. It's normal to regret having kids, full stop. Maybe not normal for humanity, but certainly normal for humanity in this mutilated culture that we're all living in. This is a toxic culture. So shit becomes normal in this culture that is actually very abnormal for humans, because we are responding to basically never-ending suffering and twisting of our nature, you know. And then I thought, like, oh, how much would I get judged if I just posted, like, you know, it's okay. It's okay to regret having kids. It's okay to regret a ton of stuff around parenting and becoming a parent without that, like, placating good girl addendum. But of course, I still love my kids and I wouldn't trade them for the world. Without that, just, I regret having kids, full stop. Just in a neutral way. Not making myself a problem, not making my kids a problem. I can fully regret having kids, and that is completely decoupled from them being any sort of problem. And then the thought came to me, you know, I used to do quite a bit of writing when I was younger. And with writing, there's this whole culture around training horses and understanding horses. And it was during my, like, teenage years that this kind of horse whispering thing became popular. It was the beginning of, like, instead of kind of, again, forcing wild animals to bend to man's civilized will, it was like, oh, actually, like, we get a lot better results if we talk to horses using their language. We get a lot better results if we're fucking gentle and quiet and slow. If we don't break a horse. And that's the terminology, right? It's tame a horse, break a horse, train a horse. All these words just very explicitly reveal the fucked up relationship, right? It's not like partner with a horse. You know, it's not like invite a horse. And there's this woman I follow on Facebook who is very much, you know, one of the leaders of this movement that's very, like, horse-centric, horse-led, right? Similar to child-led. And she has all these stories about, like, these absolutely wild horses that everyone else had given up on, that she took in and formed relationships with. And my thought of, like, wanting to return my kid to the pound as though he were like a too wild puppy gets transformed into, there's not many humans that will welcome a wild horse. And it certainly isn't easy. Most of us prefer one that's broke. That's this is another term in the horse world, bomb proof. You know how you make a horse bomb proof? By disassociating them so damn hard, by breaking their spirit. My kid isn't broke. He is wild. And the same way that if, he was a horse, we would appreciate his wild spirit. We would appreciate the way he's inconvenient, the way he has to be kept in a separate paddock, the way only one person can ride him. I want to appreciate my son in the same way, and I want to appreciate, quite fucking frankly, myself in the same way. I want to regard myself for how hard this is. We look at horsewomen who, are able to form these bonds with these incredibly wild animals that, the most seasoned cowboys couldn't, and we pedestalize them. Like, oh, what an amazing bond she has. She's a horse whisperer. And what we don't talk about is all the moments she doubted herself and cried herself to sleep and wanted to give up. All the times she had rupture and repair with the horse. All the times her patience snapped. And I want to honor that. It isn't like, oh, this beautiful nature lady. It's not that. It takes incredible inner fortitude. And I want to celebrate that in myself. And I want to celebrate that in all the other parents who regret having kids. It's okay to regret having kids. It's okay to name it. In fact, it's healing. And your parenting just grows around that. The same way that an oyster layers nacre on, whatever bit of sand got into its fucking shell. Here's the deal. As parents, sand will inevitably, there is no way to avoid it, get into our shell. That's part of parenting, is all of a sudden, sand gets into your shell, whereas before you maybe had a little bit more control around keeping your shell clean. And again, if you let yourself be with the truth, and you let yourself be with humanity, and you let yourself be with self-compassion and self-repair, then it turns into a pearl and you just go on living, My regret around having kids, it doesn't eat away at me. It doesn't consume me. It doesn't blind me with rage. It just sits in there. And sometimes it comes to the forefront. And sometimes I forget that it's there. And sometimes I even ask myself, have I evolved past this? When my kids are 20, will I have completely alchemized this regret? Will there be absolutely none left? Who the fuck knows? Anyways, this is just a very truthful download. And for that reason, I am reserving it for my paid subscribers. Until next time.